I'm supposed to let you know you're being recorded. You're being recorded, Brandon. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Sherwin-Williams Pro Plus Business Training Series. I'm Christine Rich. I'm your host. I'm the Res Repaint Marketing Director with Sherwin-Williams. And with me today is a returning guest, one of our favorites, Brandon Vaughn. Brandon, thanks for being with us again.
One of our favorites. You just made me blush right there. Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed the last time and can't wait to dive into some awesome stuff this time.
Yeah, so last time we talked a lot about finding and generating quality leads with ease. We had lots of great feedback on that. Folks can go over to the Sherwin-Williams YouTube channel and rewatch that episode if they like. But today, we're going to talk about the stages of business. One of the biggest questions I get from contractors is, I've made it this far and I'm just trying to get over that hump. I'm trying to break through to that next level of my business and I just feel stuck. And you and I were having a conversation. You had such great advice. And that's when we thought we got to have Brandon back on. So with that, I'll remind everyone that this is pre-recorded. We are going to be joined live with Brandon immediately following, so he and I can answer your questions live during that portion of the webinar. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Brandon, and I will see you live over there later.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, this is one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time with a lot of pros and painters is, how do I get off the truck? How do I know it's time to hire a salesperson? When do I know I should be hiring an office manager or a foreman? Or, what's my next step in business? And so this session is really going to be a good teaching combination of mindset and teaching, because you got to get your mind straight in order to understand, letting go of control and getting off of, one position, working in the business and starting to work more on the business. So it's going to be kind of a combination of that. We're going to dive into a lot of stuff. And you're definitely going to want to tune in. So anything you can do to silence your phones, message your team, let them know like, hey, I'm going to be locked into this thing, the better. I encourage you to take notes. I'm going to be showing some org charts, hire by hire, exactly how to build a multi-million-dollar business. It's going to be epic. So comment down in chat if you're ready to go. Say, let's go. Even though this is pre-recorded, I'm watching this live. So I'm going to be interacting with you guys via chat as well. So make sure you give me lots of feedback on how things are going. Okay, so what I'll go ahead and do and just kind of start by sharing my screen here and sharing a concept that I've heard for a long time. And maybe you've heard this expression before. Time is money. Christine, have you heard this before? Time is money? I
absolutely have. And it's, yes.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people, including my father, and I've heard this over the years where, hey, time is money. And what the message is really kind of saying is that time is valuable. It's valuable like money. However, I have a kind of an argument against this phrase. And the argument is that time is not money. Time is actually infinitely more valuable than money. We can spend our money. We can lose our money. We can save up for it. We can lose it, but then we can find it again. And we can choose when to spend it, when not to spend it. Time is the opposite. We choose to spend it whether we want to or not. Every day, every minute, every second, time is passing by. And it's a reality that we have to kind of understand very, very deeply. This gentleman right here, comment in chat if you know who this guy is. He's worth a lot of money. $156 billion is his net worth. Check this out. Mr. Jeff Bezos can spend $8,961,187 every hour, and his net worth never goes down. Isn't that crazy? He can spend that much money, and that number at the top is still the same. How do you even spend that kind of money? It's impossible.
I'd like to try.
Yeah, you probably get bored after a few days, being like, "What else am I going to buy?" And it's just going to be meaningless, right? But how many more years does he have left? Well, for the average human adult in the United States, it's actually less than this. It's probably closer to about 18 years. If he was Steve Jobs, he'd already be deceased. We don't know when that date is. Time is the only way that we should be thinking about how we grow our business. And sometimes we fall into a trap. And I'm going to share with you this graphic here. Maybe you've seen something kind of similar, but this is actually my daughter, Jaden, represented on this sheet. My wife had an intervention moment with me, thankfully, when I was finding myself working, 60, 80 hours a week nights, weekends. And I was going through it. I was having panic attacks. I was totally burnt out. And she stopped me and she said, "Hey, remember this dream that you kind of sold me of, hon, this will all be worth it. That we're doing this to be my own boss and have time freedom and all this other stuff and all the things that I kind of promised her." She's like, every week is passing by where the kids aren't seeing you. You're not present when you are home. The weekends, the nights are taken up by you working on the house or doing other kinds of projects or working on your business. Like, time is passing. And so we actually created these charts. And this chart, we have 18 rows by 52 columns. So 1 week for every week that passes for our kids until they're 18 and they grow out of the house. I saw another statistic. We spend an average of 19 years with our kids. On average, they move out around 19. And then from that point on, you'll only spend one more cumulative year with them for the rest of your life. Like, this is precious time. So when I look at this sheet and I fill out how many years there are, okay, we got 4 more years left with my daughter. Now she's 16. We only have a couple of years left. But if we do one family vacation a year, that's 3 more family vacations, 4 more family vacations with with my daughter. Time is the most important currency that we can have. So if we think about this is kind of the first step in adjusting our mindset of not falling into this trap that I call the DIY death trap. How many of you have ever said, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself? No one's going to work as hard as me. And give me that. I want to do it. It's harder to tell someone else and teach them how to do it than it is for us to just do it ourselves. Anyone with me on that one?
I've been there myself. Yeah, that's where the panic attacks come from, right?
That's exactly where the panic attacks come from. And it's hard because we have a difficult time in letting go of control. So I'll share a real quick story with me. My background, I've been in home services my whole life. My father was an owner-operator window cleaner for 33 years. He was the guy on the tools, every customer, every job, every sales appointment, every phone call. It was my dad. Between 0 and 1 employees for all 33 of those years. And I was one of those employees for many of those years. But when I went out and started my own business, guess what? Doing the same thing. I found myself falling into the same kind of trap where, hey, I wanted to make these nice new shirts. Well, you know what? It's really expensive to go buy these shirts. These uniform companies want like $25 a shirt. How about I buy a vinyl plotter instead and buy a heat press and make my own shirts? I did the math one day and realized that I was basically paying myself $4 an hour to make my own shirts. Like, not a good use of my time. But we all do this, right? I had a vinyl plotter. Okay, let me do the lettering on my vehicles, these terrible little white vans that were really sketchy driving down the road. I think they're like $3,000 Astro vans. But it's always like save money. When the reality is that the time that's involved, we have a finite amount. Why do we do this sometimes? Why is it when I decided to expand out my shop parking lot, I rented an excavator when I'd never driven it a day in my life, and I spent every night, every weekend for several weeks trying to figure this out when I could have just paid someone else and actually work on something else in my business that was of high value? So this is Brandon, burnt out. Maybe this is you as well.
Brandon, we hear that a lot from pros lately too. Contractors are saying they're burnt out. Yeah,
it is. It's too much work. And as we go through the 5 stages of business, my goal is for you to have an epiphany moment where you understand, like, that's why I'm so tired, because there's too many departments we have to focus on. So, fast forward a few years from this, went from 0 employees to 70 employees over the course of the next 5.5 years. And it's not because I'm a super genius. It's because I had an amazing team, and I finally learned to let go of control and bring people on the team that are smarter than me, and started to understand, and had good coaches and good mentors that kind of helped me. Did a lot of really cool things after that, spoke a lot on stage, did a lot of social media things, actually started a company called Conquer, where now, we coach other home service business owners kind of how to grow their own businesses. We have 40 plus certified coaches. And when you ask any one of these coaches, what's one of the most powerful things that they've learned over the years? It's letting go of control. Okay. Last thing I dive into before I jump into the 5 stages of business. There's this really, really cool book. It's actually a short story called Poseidon by an author named Franz Kafka. And Kafka, they actually turned this into a descriptive word, an adjective, where it's like if something is Kafkaesque, It's this absurd situation where someone finds themselves then where they're like a prisoner of their own doing. Well, his version of Poseidon was the god of the sea had so much paperwork that he had to do, and he refused to let any one of his servants help him out with this because no one was worthy for the task at hand. So when someone would come up to him and beg Poseidon and say, Poseidon, please go explore your realm, take a look at what you've built, he would dismiss them and he'd be like, no, no, no. This paperwork is so important. Only I can do this. So even though he was God of all of the sea, he never had time to go explore it because he was a prisoner of his own ego. I mean, does that sound familiar to maybe those of you who might be watching this? This mindset of, well, no one can do it as good as me. Is that really true? For me, it certainly wasn't. As a business owner, I thought no one could do it as good as me until I finally started letting go of control and I brought people onto my team that owned departments that I wasn't as good at. And so we're going to talk about systems, we're going to talk about people, but let me just go ahead and describe these 4 departments that every home service business needs to put people and systems in place to be able to fully automate it, fully be able to step out of the day-to-day operations in the field. You ready? Comment down in chat. Say, I'm with you, Brandon. Let's go. All right. Maps. Let go of control. Hashtag anything down below if you want. I want to make sure you're with me. Remember, I'm watching this on chat, so I'll be typing in with you. All right. Marketing. All the work required to get the phone to ring. The work getting leads coming in, going, Facebook, Google, Yelp, Angie's List, all these things, right? Getting leads coming in. Admin department, all of the work that's involved with the back end office, answering the phone, scheduling, dispatching, payroll, bookkeeping, etc. Production, all of the work that we could replace this hammer with a paintbrush and a roller, and we'd understand anything that has to do with the services that we offer, right? So technicians, vehicles, equipment, inventory, our supplies, making sure that we have everything that we need to be able to actually complete the work. And then the last department is sales. So sales is kind of self-explanatory, but converting those leads into actual paying jobs. Now we're the executive. And in this executive department, we're responsible for making sure that all 4 of these departments are running smoothly so that we can actually grow and scale our business. So, imagine walking down a street carrying a box for, a huge box stacked 4 tall and trying to balance all of these things. You can't see where you're going. You're trying to walk up and down stairs and you're dropping stuff because it's too much to do. Well, do you ever feel this way when you're out on the brush, on the tools, doing the work, and your phone's ringing and you have a sales call you got to go do, and and there's something else that's demanding your attention? It's too much for any one person to do. And to grow a business that has real true enterprise value, you have to have a lot of people on your team in order to be able to support it. Think about just the hours required to build a multi-million-dollar business. All the work that needs to get completed, all the office work, all the sales, the marketing, the production side. It's definitely not going to be solved in the 40 hours that you have. Or if you try to stretch it into 80 or 100, it still ain't going to solve it. So how can we think about building our business in the proper way? All right. So we're going to now go very tactical and very teaching. If you're with me, comment in chat. I'm with you. Let's go. We're going to talk about the 5 stages of business and how this kind of progresses hire by hire and what a typical path looks like for an owner who starts out just by themselves, day one single employee, and they're it, right? This is stage 1. And stage 1 we call the production stage because that's where the primary focus is on the owner. They're primarily focused on doing the work. Now, if you notice up here, what are they still also focused on and needing to work on? They still need to make the phone ring. They still got to process, their bills and their bookkeeping. They still need to go out and sell the jobs. This is the org chart of my dad for 33 years right here. It's tough and it can be a little bit overwhelming. And as you start to grow and maybe you hire your first assistant painter to come alongside you, right? Then maybe eventually that painter gets their own truck and maybe gets their own assistant, and maybe that assistant becomes another lead, and now you have a couple crews. But if you're still in the field and you're not out of the field yet, meaning you're doing more than 80% of your time is actually painting, you'll still be in stage one. So I want you to kind of visualize this and comment below in chat. Are you in stage one? We have 4 more stages to kind of talk about, but are you still on the truck in the field doing the work?
Yeah,
Well,
Brandon, we were talking with Nick Slavik a couple weeks ago, and I think he shared the statistic that the average res repaint company is 1.3 people, and will be out of business within 1 to 3 years. And I think this is really why we wanted to have this conversation with you, because I think this is where folks get stuck and they can't break through to that next level. So,
oh my gosh, yeah, that's so true. Well, let me just back up here, because maybe even here you're thinking to yourself like, okay, here's maybe you, or here's maybe you. I want to give you a real quick piece of advice on the next person that you hire. If maybe this is you, who should this person be? Well, the mistake a lot of owners make, including my dad for a lot of years, is you hire a laborer, you hire a grunt, you hire a helper. They never talk to customers. They just go, hey, go clean up the tools, go clean everything out. I want to go inside. I want to talk to the customer. And what's happening is you're never teaching someone to be able to become a lead technician, someone who can actually talk to customers and engage and go over the scope of work and collect payments and, take care of all that other stuff. So my encouragement to you is hire someone who you could see replacing you on the truck, and have that be your assistant, or that you'll eventually like migrate into a lead. Even the
so
second
Brandon,
person.
can I ask a quick question real
Yes.
quick though?
Yeah,
One of
please.
the things we've heard from painters too is that they're afraid if they do that. Well, what if they learn everything they need to know and then they start their own business?
Well,
I'm sure you've heard that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem is I mean, I could probably speak for 10 minutes just on that mindset alone, but the quick answer I'll kind of give is, people say like, well, what if I train all these people and then they leave? Well, what if you don't and they stay? Like, what's worse if you don't train your people to be successful in any given role? So there are of course things that you can do, like, NDAs and non-compete agreements and those types of things, which are good boilerplate things to do. But the most important part is just to really just have those conversations with people up front. Now I'll tell you, straight up, I've had several people that have quit, gone out, started their own business. I've never actually pursued them legally and, tried to shut them down, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. There's so much work out there. You have no idea. That picture that you saw of, my trucks and my fleets, I probably only had about like a 3% market penetration in my market. Think about it. Every building that someone works in or lives in can be painted, both inside and outside. It's unbelievable how big the market is. And one single solo operator or another small business, it doesn't even matter. It really doesn't even matter. As long as you're not bad actors and stealing customers and going and, doing something in bad faith, that just comes with the territory, and you shouldn't worry about that. You should worry about just your customers and serving them at the highest level. So as we kind of like look at this vehicle, we get a couple trucks, maybe we got 2-man crews. Maybe you do different type of work where you have a larger crews. Don't get too caught up on like the exact details of, the org chart. The principles behind here is you're still in the field. You're not out of the field yet. You know that you're in stage one. Here's some pain points. First of all, you're probably never going to be growing above 400K in revenue. You'll be lucky to do that, because think about all the sales that's needed to be able to get that much revenue coming in. And you're the only one doing sales and marketing and answering the phones. It's too much. So here's your pain points. You're working long hours. You find yourself booked out a ways, or it's hard to keep up with all the quotes that you're doing. You find yourself not following up with estimates like you should be. You just find yourself constantly saying, I just can't find the time. This is actually, these pain points are your business grabbing you by the collars and saying, hey, it's time to grow. It's time to take the next step. It's time to get out of this really terrible, awkward stage and move into the next stage of business. And what's that next stage? It's stage 2, where the owner completely gets out of the field. Is this easy to do? No, it's terrifying to do. I remember the first time that I let my crews go out on their own without me there. I was like the helicopter parent that drove and parked up the street around the corner and like came and was like watching them in the bushes. I was like, all right, are they following the checklist? So what are they doing? because I was, it's kind of like watching your kids go to school for the first time. It's scary, and it does take kind of a leap of faith to do it. However, after we've kind of delegated this production department off of here, now we're able to focus more on, of course, we still have 3 departments to kind of figure out, but now we're primarily focusing on answering the phones, getting things ready, because one of the next key hires that we're going to be is going to be replacing ourselves in the office. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But maybe the company grows a little bit bigger. Maybe we can stretch the revenue a little bit more to 600K in revenue. But where's the bottleneck? Well, it's us, right? Punchline, it's always us. We're always the biggest bottleneck in our businesses. So here's the pain points: long hours, hard to keep up with quotes. It's chaotic in the office. You got like all these quotes hanging out everywhere, and you're missing phone calls. You're talking to a customer while the phones are ringing in your pocket, and you're like, great, now I got to call that customer back. And it's a mess. It's super, super chaotic. You feeling burnt out? It's because your business is grabbing you, shaking you, saying, most likely, hey, it's time to move on to the next stage of business. So this gets us to stage 3. And stage 3 is when you go out and you hire some of your first, I'm only going to call them non-revenue generating employees, just simply because they're not actually on the tools, paint, and stuff. So in that sense, they're not billable employees where you're billing their hours to someone else. But don't conflate the fact that they may be called non-revenue generating employees. Sometimes these are the biggest leverage employees on your team to be able to really help your business get to that next level and generate a lot more revenue. One of these may be an admin manager, someone in the office to start answering phones, calling customers, scheduling estimates, scheduling jobs, taking care of bookkeeping, taking care of payroll, really delegating that admin department. And then maybe as your crews start getting bigger, you need a production manager or a foreman or someone to, manage getting all the paint and making sure that everything's all set up for the job and the customer has expectations and the job is prepped and kind of ready for your production crews to go show up. These are quote unquote non-revenue generating employees. Your production manager might be able to generate some revenue if he's on the tools, but now he's training and hiring and firing and doing performance reviews with your technicians, your painters, and making sure they're staying on top there. So now you can really truly kind of step out of the production and the admin departments, and you have 2 individuals that like own these departments. All right, what's left? What do we got left, Christine, that the owner is still focusing on at this point?
Sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sales. Could one person sell $1.5 million of painting projects? Yeah, could. Is he going to be a rock star salesperson that's running lots of quotes and going out and doing lots of things? It depends if it's commercial or residential, what your niche is. But it's possible. However, you may find that sales just kind of becomes a grind at this point. You're working long hours trying to get to all the customers, and you might be experiencing some poor efficiencies on your sales processes because you're the only one doing it. So this is where we kind of move into stage 4. And stage 4 is when, drum roll please, you get your first salesperson. And for me, this was one of the coolest moments for me in my business when I first brought on my first salesperson, because there was now someone else in my company that's livelihood was dependent upon work coming in. And it took a little bit of pressure off of me to be able to do that. And it really kind of freed me up to be able to focus more on just marketing and making sure that things are just kind of like organized. So in this instance, you're really kind of becoming a little bit more of like a general manager at this point. You're still focusing on marketing, but phone call comes in, admin manager answers the phone, they page it out to a salesperson that goes out and closes the job, gives it back to the admin manager and the production manager and schedules it and puts it on the, on the books. And payment gets completed and the admin manager processes the payment. The owner doesn't have a whole lot of things to do at this point, aside from making sure that things are staying optimized. Don't get me wrong, there's still lots of things to do here. And then also owning the marketing side of things. So, when you look at like, okay, now we can kind of start getting some traction and start growing our painting business with more salespeople. And, for me, it took 3 salespeople before I really got a good one. I didn't know what I didn't know about salespeople. And sometimes people hire a salesperson, they won't do very well. And they'll be like, wow, I just got to do it myself again, and they fall back into that same DIY death trap. But this is a critical component to be able to kind of scale up a business is, if you think about it, this whole journey is kind of promoting yourself from a painter to a CEO, and you're kind of climbing your own corporate ladder. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
So Brandon, what, in your opinion, what are some tips that you can share to look for, like what makes a great salesperson? Because I think there's a difference between someone who interviews really well to be a salesperson and then someone who actually is a great salesperson. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's 5 behavioral attributes that I look for a really good salesperson. It's high proactivity, high aggression, low self-control, and high creativity, and high criticality. So, I didn't just make these up off the top of my head. There's a lot of behavioral science, psychology behind this. We have a software program that we use where we actually give candidates an assessment, and then it'll tell us what their 5 scores are on a scale of like 0 to 100. But high proactivity, you want them, going out and getting it done. High aggressiveness, they're knocking on doors. They're kind of hard to manage too. A good salesperson will kind of always be up in your face about, hey, what's going on with this customer? What's going on with that one? Like they're always like in a hurry and need to get something done. Good salesperson usually. And then low self-control. I know you chuckled on that one, Christine, but I like my salespeople to spend their money as fast as they make it. Because then they're always hungry and they're always like looking for it. So typically low self-control is a little bit more impulsive on just like, I'm just going to give that customer a call. I just got this big check. I want to go out and I want to buy a car. I want to go on a vacation. I want to do something. And then they're like, crap, I need to go out and sell a whole bunch more so that way I can kind of catch back up on those things. And then high creativity, kind of self-explanatory. You want to be creative in how you think about how you can prospect and communicate with customers. And then high criticality is the desire to be critical of people and things. So, when the realtor says, hey, salesperson, if you give me a really great deal on this one, I got loads of work for you. Like someone with a little more criticality is going to, think of a better way to kind of take care of that as opposed to just giving out discounts to absolutely everybody, or not celebrating until the check clears, not being like, oh yeah, this one's in the bag, no problem. And then all of a sudden it disappears. And, those are kind of the attributes that I look for with someone that's absolutely willing to go knock on doors is also a big one for me personally.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great question.
I didn't mean to laugh at your answer. I just wasn't expecting it.
No, believe me, you're not the only one that chuckles at that because it is one of those things where, people are like, wait, low self-control? That doesn't make any sense. All right. So last stage of business. This is when you just become a business owner. You're not an operator anymore. Maybe you go out and you hire a GM, a CEO, someone to run the business. Maybe you have an equity vesting schedule, which is a fancy term for, sharing equity with them if they hit certain performance benchmarks and, maybe earning a few percent of the company. Someone that allows you to really step away from the business. And now you're just talking to one single person when you're checking in on how the business is running. And there's a lot of people that own, several businesses, dozens of businesses, where they have good operators, good integrators that run those companies. And they're just on the equity table as an owner, and you basically get paid profit distributions, but you're not actively taking a salary out of the business. So this is kind of that executive stage where you have a GM, and at this point, you still want to have accountability, have good dashboards, monitor your KPIs, your key performance indicators, and this is kind of that advanced stage where I think a lot of people would love to be someday. Own a business that just has good enterprise value, prints them checks, mailbox money. This is that executive stage 5. And of course, this can be at any given, stage of the business, but this is kind of that process of kind of growing. And some people will stay, on as the owner and the main operator until they build the company to 50 million. So executive is really kind of that bridge where you kind of step out of the business. So what does a $3 million company look like? Well, roughly, maybe it looks something like this. You got 10 technicians, 10 painters, 20 painters here. You got a production supervisor, production manager. You have a general manager. You have an admin manager, maybe a couple of admin assistants. Maybe some of those are virtual assistants that may live, near shore, offshore, or maybe they're in-house. You have a sales manager. You have salespeople that are going out and doing sales. Now, maybe you have less painters than this. Maybe you have subcontractors instead of, crews on your own. The point is that all of these departments are still covered. Those 4 departments are still covered. And, what does a $12 million company look like? Well, you could maybe have multiple locations. We see painting businesses, and just like with my cleaning business, I started out in one market. I moved an hour away and started up another business in another market. Moved an hour away from there, started up another business in another market. Had these smaller branches that were kind of ran under one consolidated location, or one consolidated headquarters, so to speak. So, there's unlimited growth potential of whatever you want to do with your company, however far you want to kind of grow and build it. And there's a path. There's a path to be able to do it. Now, I know we're getting close to kind of getting to wrap up here. I want to have lots of Q&A, and I want to jump back on here afterwards, and we'll have lots of questions. But I want to share with you one of the things that we did here, or one of the things that I did this past couple of years. I started a YouTube channel called Map to a Million, where I documented growing a brand new coating business from zero. And I set some frameworks and some ground rules for myself. Those ground rules were, I wouldn't answer any phone calls from day one, wouldn't do any sales, wouldn't do any of the work out in the field from day one. I'd only focus on hiring people, marketing, branding, putting together systems, and that's it. And this is the company that I started. It's called Wise Coatings. We actually specialize in garage floor coatings. And I hired basically people from day one, hired 3 employees from day one. And I'll kind of show you my version of that, org chart and kind of how that grew. But now 2 years later, we actually are just about ready to cross the 20 location threshold. We're doing about $1 million a month in revenue, which has been like one of the most incredible journeys. Again, it's all on the team. I work from home every day. I probably spend less than 10 hours a week in this business. Primarily because I get people that are smarter than me and bring them on the team to own those 4 departments. So here's what we look like. Month 1, I hired 3 people: a lead technician, an assistant, and a sales/admin person. So what I mean by that is they were doing sales, but I'd have the phone ring directly to my salesperson. So salesperson would answer the phone, go out, sell the jobs, and then he would actually schedule them. And I have lead/production manager because that individual was someone who I knew was going to be my production manager eventually. So next month, hired 2 more technicians, got another van. So now I was running 2 vans. We started bumping up our marketing spend to, $6,000 a month, eventually up to $12,000 a month to start getting, leads coming in. And then the next month, I hired on an office manager. I got my production manager out of the field to where now he was just focusing on training and ordering products. And so by month 3, we had 7 employees that were working in the business. And month 4, we hit $103,000 in completed work. The 4th month that we started in business. Now in my market, which was Portland, Oregon, we had 27 other floor coating companies in our area. So there's still a lot of competition. And this is kind of what I mean by there's so much work that's out there to be had. Now I have had people say, Brandon, that's unfair. You know how to grow a business. You had all the systems, you know the process, and you're right. It's totally unfair. Having all the systems, like from day one, I pretty much just like copy and pasted all of our systems that we have in Concur into a Google Drive, and boom, I had all my offer letters, job descriptions, everything done from pretty much day one. It's super unfair. So my call to action to you as we kind of, close this out is if you'd like to kind of get an unfair edge as well and maybe learn a little bit more about Concur, this is our annual Concur Summit that we hosted last year in January. You can fill out an application and you can come and you can hang out with us. Our average Conqueror grows about 77% year over year in our programs. And we have all kinds of systems, documents, tools. In fact, what we kind of went through is one of our many, many, many courses and content that we have kind of in the program. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll throw the link up here real quick. If you want to click on that, you can schedule a good fit call with me and my team. We'll learn a little bit more about your business, and it might not be a right fit for you, but it might also be. So bit.ly/ConquerFit, you can learn a little bit more about us, learn a little more about you. We have programs that start at $97 a month. So it's, we go up from there as far as what level of coaching and things that you want. All right. So maybe we get into some question and answers. What do you think, Christine? How was that?
First of all, this is awesome. I think I'm assuming that people's wheels are spinning right now, and we're going to have a ton of questions. So
Good.
y'all want to meet us over? We're going to be joining you live. Again, use the chat feature at the top of your team screen and to answer, or excuse me, to put in any of your questions for Brandon or for myself. We also have lots of great resources from Sherwin-Williams. So we'll be over there and let's chat.
All right. Sounds good. See you over. You bet.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you again, Brandon.
Good to see you guys as well.
Julie, nice to see you. Sorry you couldn't be there for our pre-recording, but of course we love to have Julie Zansky with us.
Hello. I know, I'm bummed. I got it. I got to watch it. It was awesome.
Yeah, great conversation. So, Brandon, first and foremost, thanks again for joining us for a second time in a row. There was so many great conversations happening in the chat during the pre-recording. So I'm going to jump into some of the questions. The first question is from Sarah. She asks, how feasible is it to begin as the executive, still doing sales, marketing, and admin, but not being on the tools? I'm starting over, love the industry, but honestly, never want to paint again. I would love to hire a great team and start at stage 2. I would love to hear if that's a wise decision and any tips to implement.
Yeah, great question, Sarah. By the way, can everyone see me on here? Am I pinned for everyone? They can see me on there with you guys? Okay, cool. So what I will say is that that's what I did with Wise Coatings. So it's not what I did with All Clean when I first scaled up that business. I was the guy on the tools. I went through all of those things. And I think that there's value to being able to understand the mechanics of how to do the thing, whether it's painting, cleaning, HVAC, whatever that is. But there's a large number of people that actually have built the business from day one, not doing any of the work in the field. And it's kind of your choice as to whether or not you want to learn enough to kind of be dangerous, or bring in someone who could potentially be a partner with you in that venture, who has the technical expertise to be able to cover that side of the department for you. So in the case of Wise Coatings, I brought on 2 individuals that had some experience. We flew down to a manufacturer's facility where they did full training for all 3 of us together. And that gave us the experience and the confidence we needed to be able to go back home and actually start doing work right away. But I didn't do the work. I had my guys who I hired do the work. And then what I did is I offered them potential to earn equity in the business, especially one of the key individuals, to earn potential equity in the business, because equity can kind of be like golden handcuffs in some way. And you can build equity vesting schedules where, if they leave within, X number of years, they get their valuation of their stock isn't worth as much, so they can exit. Or, if there's for cause termination things, how does all that work out? A good business attorney can help you kind of get some of those things dialed in. But it's 100% possible to be able to build a business without doing the actual work in the field. And oftentimes that path will help you grow faster. However, it can be a little bit more of an investor type of a path, because you kind of aren't paying yourself as a technician from day one. So it kind of depends on how much cash you need from the business to be able to get things worked versus how much you can kind of use cash and working capital to kind of, not pay yourself as much. Because I didn't pay myself very much when I first got started, because I didn't necessarily need to. So there's different paths and there's different ways to kind of grow on that way.
Great.
I want to try to keep these questions, the answers concise, but that one I had to kind of.
Yeah. No, that was a long one. Julie, are you seeing any questions that you want to ask in the chat?
Yeah, so I do see Brandon did answer some of these in the chat, like while the recording was going, but I think that this one I'd like him to talk about, which was the next one, which was, hey, what is a good starting base salary for a salesperson and what incentives should be offered? And you had given a nice answer to this, so.
Yeah, I really like the draw against commission model for salespeople. I don't like to have a base plus commission myself personally. Can you do that model? Yes, you can. But the reason why I like to have a strong incentive for commission for salespeople is that they get that instantaneous feedback. They're always hungry. They go out, they sell a job, they get paid. And oftentimes, depending on how big of a base or small of a base you have, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because a good salesperson will always sell, like crazy. So usually what I do is I have a really small base salary range that's somewhere in the range of like, $36,000, $3,000 a month type of a range. And then every month we take a look at how much gross sales they sold for that given month period. And then we assign a percentage on that. And there's different percentages for different industries. 7% is what we do for my floor coatings company. And then whatever is higher, let's say they go out and sell $100,000 worth of sales that month, they'll make $7,000 in commission instead. So they won't get 3 plus 7, they'll just get 7. So at the end of the month, they'll get a bonus for $4,000 to catch them up to whatever that is. If they sell less than $30,000 that month, then their draw is higher. But whatever that delta is, they might have to make up for that difference in future months. So it's kind of a running progress. And we have a worksheet for this in our Conquer program that has a draw against commission calculator that you can download and use, for your sales teams.
One of the things we talked a little bit about during the call that you touched on, but I was at PCA last month. It's all running together.
And everything runs together.
It was kind of like in between. It was like February into March. So
that's right. That's right. And it was the leap year week. Anyways, there was a lot of conversation around personal assessment and really knowing your people, knowing you, and having that reflection and different types of assessments. Can you talk a little bit about the assessment tool that you created, that you said you give for your, I don't know if you created it or if you use it, but that you use for your sales folks? I actually think you sent it to me and I took it, which was very interesting.
You scored really high as marketing creative, lo and behold.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's a tool called HireBus. And if you go to hirebus.com, you can go check it out. Basically what it is it's a behavioral assessment tool. So before we even interview someone, all of the applicants that come in through our pipeline, our hiring pipeline, whether it's for a technician, a sales person, an office manager, a production manager, even a CEO for one of my companies, we have them take the assessment, and the assessment only takes a few minutes to do, but on the back end of it, it gives you 21 different behavioral scales and a benchmark for how well a person may fit for a role behaviorally on a scale of 1 to 10. So those 5 benchmarks that I mentioned on this training session for a salesperson, it'll actually show a scale of 1 to 10 how well they fit in those 5 different areas. So we use that to hire any salesperson in our company. We make sure that they score at least a 7 or above before we even would like to interview them. Just because, it's prioritizing those who actually may be a good behavioral fit for a role. And then you do all your due diligence with your interviews and your resume and your background checks, et cetera. But it's a good first swing to try to see if someone will be a good fit for a role.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I love that. Julie, what else do we have in the chat?
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, she's muted.
Of course I am. Of course I'm muted. What do you think of starting this type of business part-time? If you have a full-time W-2 job, but as an absentee model, what advice would you give?
Ooh, that's a great question. My advice that I give to start a business, honestly, with Wise Coatings, I kind of started that. I had a full-time job with Conquer as chief strategist over there. I started this job in a part-time capacity. So deliberately, what I chose to do from day one was not answer any phone calls from day one, not go do any sales from day one, not even do any of the work in the field. So it required me to focus first and foremost on hiring a good team, because we only have so many hours in the week. And I personally am in the mindset that it's not worth it to sacrifice your nights and your weekends and your family time to go pursue career and money. I think that that's way more valuable, myself personally. So if you look at it strategically and think, how could I build this how could I build this business with no arms and no legs? It kind of forces you to just use your brain. And the areas that I focused in was hiring first and foremost. So I started my job ads up from day one. And I also started marketing from day one. Once you get the marketing, you get the lead flow coming in, you can hire someone that goes and runs those leads, sells those jobs, puts them on the schedule, and then you can hire the technicians to go out and complete that. Or you can even go the route of subcontractors, where you can just partner up with subcontractors. And in the painting industry, this is a very popular path of going and, selling jobs, having an estimator go out and sell those, and then just have subcontractors go out and do the work. So in that case, there's maybe only a couple of hires that you need to make: a good salesperson and a good project manager. So 2 people you can hire, and then just get the leads coming in on the marketing side, and you can build a business on the side.
So I'll give a quick plug, and I've got my my partner here, Danielle, is offline. But Danielle, if you wouldn't mind putting a link to the job board. So Sherwin-Williams has a free jobs board that's just for the painting industry, and it's open to any of our Pro Plus customers. And it's not just for painters; it's for project managers, office managers, sales folks. So you can post jobs there free, and you can look for applicants and post your resume there as well. So it's a really, really great opportunity to kind of build a team without having to put a lot of money up front. Like, sometimes you have to pay for other job boards and things like that. So we will make sure to link that in the chat. We have a question here. It says, I have 10 to 12 different jobs daily and need a service management program that works with QuickBooks Online and also fully functional app for scheduling on a phone also. Any help would be appreciated.
So what I use personally for Wise Coatings is we use a platform called House Call Pro. So they have the ability to, and there's lots of them out there. There's Service Titan, there's Jobber, there's Workies. I personally like House Call Pro because your estimator can go out. You can take pictures of the job. You can attach them to that estimate. You can take estimate notes. You can build your price books out. So it's really easy to, kind of do that. Some people will use, several like purpose specific tools, like just for bidding. I personally am of the belief that there's no perfect CRM. You'll always get one that does one thing really great and then kind of does these things okay. So as long as you just adapt your processes for your own personal business, you can pretty much make any CRM work. Just absolutely start making sure that you get it consolidated inside of one single system. So that's what my recommendation would be.
Julie, see any others that catch in your eye? Thank you everyone for adding these questions too. There's really great ones.
I know there's some really great questions in here. I just want to make sure. This is a good one. My spouse and I have multiple businesses, all at stage 3 revenues, but we just started implementing the stage 2 practices. For each business, we have the same struggle, which position to add next. We are doing so much of everything, it's hard to know what position would help the most. We are tired of working so much and never feeling like we are keeping up, let alone having a home life. Do you hire to keep up in the office or hire to keep up in the field/sales?
So I'm going to give a little bit more of a generic answer on this, Dominique. The first thing that I'll say is, what's your zone of genius? What do you love to do? If you could do one thing every day and it just fill up your tank and you just feel like I'm in my zone, I enjoy work, is that sales? Would you love to just go out and talk to customers on a regular basis? Are you good at that? Are you good at networking, going to IRM, BOMA, National Apartment Association meetings and just like meeting with people? If that's the case, then I would, does doing office work and admin work cause you to collapse on yourself like a dying star? Like, then get that hired off. Like the thing you absolutely hate, you're like, this is not my skill set. I am not a details oriented person. I should not be doing this. I should not be talking to customers, whatever that is. I typically kind of like to look at that and think, okay, it makes sense for me to offload that off of my plate so I can focus on high value activities, high leverage activities for my business. So one of the things I try to get owners to think about is $1,000 an hour tasks versus, $20 an hour tasks. $20 an hour tasks are all answering the phones, doing bookkeeping, doing payroll, entering in estimates, doing data entry, even going out into the field and doing the work can be a $20 an hour task. But the $1,000 an hour task is when you have all those things delegated off your plate so that you can focus on your customer experience. You can focus on your sales process to increase your closing ratios, building marketing materials, managing your marketing. So that's why I said in the training why I hate calling things non-revenue generating activities is because just the act of getting that person in that role will allow you to generate massive value for your business, provided that it's doing the thing that you love and doing the thing that you're good at, whatever that may be. So I personally, like, with regards to your thing, do you hire to keep up in the office or hire to keep up in the field sales? Take a look at what your zone of genius is, and take a look at what your business needs the most. Are you struggling finding technicians? Are you struggling training technicians and getting that going? It may be good to get a service manager, a production manager that's responsible for hiring technicians and training them and, keeping your vehicles all organized and systemized. If your office is a dumpster fire, maybe you're going to kind of hone in there. If you don't have enough time to go do sales, maybe it's hiring a salesperson. It's really kind of business specific.
I just need to clarify. Did you say it makes you collapse on yourself like a dying star? Is that what you said? Okay, that made me laugh out loud.
Don't go supernova in your business. You don't want to do that.
We all have tasks like that, though. I appreciate that. Benjamin asks, you've done a great job describing each stage, but other than overall structure, are there good resources for moving from stage 1 to stage 2? Estimating, training, scheduling. There's so many good things. I know you've got a ton of resources. I'll give a shout out to some, industry organizations. PCA has tons of great resources. Obviously, Sherwin-Williams has tons of great resources. You should be talking with your rep. But Brandon, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, the big thing that comes to mind for me is if you think about the difference between stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is you're on the truck, and stage 2 is you're off the truck. That's the biggest difference. What would be required systems-wise for you to be able to actually be off the truck and have employees take over that for you and run that department? Well, you'd need to have checklists. You need to have a good CRM in place that would allow your technicians to see exactly what the scope of work is with pictures, maybe even something like company cam where you're actually videoing walkthroughs and technicians can walk through before they even talk to the customer. They need scripts for talking to customers. What do they say when they first talk to a customer? How do they go through the scope of work? Training for walking around the house. They need technical training. Is your process spray and back roll? Do you tape off edges? Do you not tape off edges? Like, all of that stuff is an important system to put in place to where you can actually step away from the production side of the business and know that your technicians are trained and have good systems to hold them accountable to actually following those systems. So I'll say that as far as like where your focus should be. That's usually one of the most important departments to kind of systemize and set up first before you get too worried about the estimate process and the scheduling process, because that's going to come later on down the road when you hire an admin manager or you hire another salesperson. So the big priority is get yourself off the tools, get yourself out of the truck so that now you can focus on those other areas. So as far as resources go, Christine said it exactly right. Amazing resources inside of there. In our Conquer program, we also have resources that you can click on and download as well with some of those documents and tools. But Nick Slavic has done an awesome job of sharing a lot of resources that he does as well. So just keep your eye out and just think about, putting systems in place to get yourself out of that lower level role and move into the next stage.
Yeah, I really feel like the common thread in all companies that have really hit that next level, everyone talks about systems. Like, you have to be able to automate and systemize everything that you can so that you can just focus on growing the business. Julie, what else are you seeing? I have another one if you haven't seen it.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going. Christine, keep going. Because
where should I look for a GC? Tanya asked that.
What did she say?
Tanya says, where should I look for a GC? I feel like you need to have a good connection to find a good contract. There's a really great resource that I've found. First of all, yes, you definitely should, try to find good connections, et cetera. But the best way to build connections is to go out and introduce yourself. So what I've done, how I built up my business was I went to a website called Data Axle. And there's a lot of websites like this. It's basically a business registry that has all different kinds of businesses. You can look them up by SIC codes or NAICS codes, and you can look for general contractors. You can look for commercial contractors, and you can get lists of everyone inside of your area, along with the name of the executive, their phone number, their address. And I would call them. And just, touch bases with them and ask for an opportunity to come in and just meet them face to face. Hey, could I stop by and just, I'd love to, show you a little sample of some of the stuff that we do. But people buy from people, and those types of relationships you build, they're just that. They're relationships, and relationships need to be nurtured. They're not going to just automatically fire, and you're just going to get cold call estimates out of the blue from a GC, unless that GC has a previous relationship that they just burned down. So oftentimes you have to go in and insert yourself in there and just get an opportunity. And it's a lot more of an outreach prospecting system than it is to just wait for something to land on your lap. I hear a lot of people say, man, my phone's not ringing. And I tell them, the phone works two ways. You don't have to just wait for the phone to ring to you. You can ring to other people, and you can get that business as well. So, get out there and just pound the pavement and make some introductions. Just start searching people up and dropping in and saying hi.
Yeah. And I think the thing to remember with that is it might not yield anything right away, but you're just building that foundation and building up that network for the future. So we have a question here about leads. So Alberto says, I've been in the industry for almost 19 years, owning my own business for a while, just starting now to try to make it grow. What do you guys think is the best way to get leads? I've tried a couple of lead selling companies without very good results. I have thoughts, but Brandon, we'll kick it over to you since you are the expert.
Well, go back and watch the webinar that we did on finding quality leads for your business, because we spent a good 30-40 minutes diving on that topic specifically. So if you aren't checking out these Sherwin-Williams webinar series and you found value here, hit the subscribe button, whatever you need to do, whitelist that email list, and come attend these, because you find a lot of value there. Getting leads, there's so many different platforms out there that you can go and you can test and you can use. It's such a long answer that I have for this one that I don't want to give it enough justice. So maybe my answer is go back and check out that webinar, because it's just so valuable. It's so much content inside of there.
We'll link it in the.
Let you give a shorter answer, Christine.
Well, I would say that the one thing to remember is, there are a lot of great companies that you can work with, and you definitely should. But I think one of the things that a lot of business owners forget is that your best source of leads are your prior customers. And it's the same thing that you said, Brandon, with the phone goes two ways. Oftentimes, if someone had a really great experience with you, just following up and reminding them that, we've got an opening in our schedule, or, when I was at your house last summer, I noticed you had a deck or a fence or a garage floor that needed recoded. Or there's so many different things you can do, but just going back to your prior customers, especially the ones who gave you great ratings and reviews, that's free. So just making sure you're nurturing those relationships too, and then asking them if they know of anyone who might be, in need of some services, because it is hard to find good contractors. It really is, as a homeowner, and they want to go with somebody they know and they trust. So it's either you've already been in their house, or they know some friends who, my friend just moved. They actually are looking for someone. So I think not being afraid to put yourself out there and kind of tap back into that pool is really important.
Yeah. And just to kind of dive into that GC piece too, from the commercial side, because if you're looking for GCs, you're looking for those large repaint businesses or large repeat business or whatever that is. There's different groups out there. Put yourself out there, be a member, Multifamily Housing Authority, go to those local trade shows for HOAs. And you'll start to network and meet people at those events in your markets. And you can make some connections that way, because to Christine's point, it's not only in the homeowner space, it's actually in those exterior commercial repaint spaces, tilt ups, where everybody's looking for good painters and reliable painters. So definitely get out, check out those groups. Multifamily Housing Authority, CAI is Condo Association Institute. Those are some great groups to get into.
So we are at time. I feel like we could talk to Brandon for hours and hours. So maybe we'll have him on a third time. Speaking of, if you're attending today's session, you're going to get an email afterwards asking for feedback. We would love to hear, how did this go? What more do you want to hear about this? Our goal at Sherwin-Williams is to help pros be successful, and we want to give you and bring you the information that you want most. So please tell us what you want to hear more about. We'll end on this note. Tanya said, you gave me great support and motivated me. I was going to give up with my painting business, my painting company. So at least we've got Tanya back in engaged. And
you got this, Tanya.
Yes, of course. Use your resources. Talk to your Sherwin rep. Go into the store. Brandon mentioned tons of great resources. But until next time, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brandon. We can't wait to talk with you again.
Yeah, my pleasure. See you guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.